These are dark times. For some of us, they always have been. Yet there is resilience in our places, wisdom in our streets, the desire to resist, to care, to be together again. We can harness this critical moment. Our stories of ruin, resistance, and renewal will light the way forward. Join us at the SF Urban Film Fest.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 7th Annual SF Urban Film Fest. My name is Faye Darmawi and I'm the founder and executive director. Our mission is to use the power of storytelling to spark discussion and civic engagement around our most pressing urban issues. And now I'd like to bring on stage Omeed Manocheri.
Hi, Faye. Thanks so much. Hello to our audience. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Omeed Manocheri, and I'm also one of the program producers with the SF Urban Film Fest and curator of today's program. Let me start off by saying it's my absolute pleasure to have you here with us today. This festival is a venture that's close to my heart and where I've transitioned from urban adjacent to full-blown urban nerd. So I owe thanks to you, our audience, and the wonderful multidisciplinary team here at the SF Urban Film Fest. Not here on screen with us today are our fellow programmers, program producers, Robin Akobio Abad and Susanna Smith, Ron Sundstrom, our humanities advisor, Kristal Chilik, our festival manager, and special shout out to our marketing guru, Hannah Moore. And last but not least, to all our volunteers. To start off, we'd like to offer a land acknowledgement gifted to us from the American Indian Cultural District. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all people who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. We are presenting this land acknowledgement to promote visibility for the Ramaytush Ohlone and all American Indians living and thriving today on their ancestral homelands. This afternoon's program is a watch party. So over the next 60 minutes, our two panelists, who I will introduce in a moment, will be our guides as we view and break down political advertisements, both for and against last year's California ballot Proposition 15. I deeply encourage you to make use of the chat functionality. First and foremost, to have your questions answered and comments heard. And second, to let us know that you're there. We definitely miss seeing your faces. But first, a few announcements.
Yeah, so we are in virtual settings and we're all getting used to navigating these virtual events, so unpredictable things may happen. Thanks for your patience, and if you have any issues, please leave your comments in the chat box. We also want to alert you that this session is being recorded. And I want to thank all our members who are joining in today. If you want to keep our community growing and become a member, it's easy to do so. Sign up via our website. And also, if you'd like to donate, our festival this year is mostly pay what you can so that all can access our programs. Your donation also supports our artists and filmmakers this year, or every year. And then, very important, please fill out a quick survey that we will drop in the chat. It's important that we get as many responses as possible so that we can understand who we're reaching and make sure that we're serving our diverse and wonderful audiences. Back to Omeed.
Thanks for those reminders, Faye. As a communications, let me tell you a little bit about this program, everyone. As a communications professional, I have always been fascinated with how and what a piece of media is trying to relate to its audience. From a teenager looking up lyrics to my favorite songs and reposting them to my MySpace, to a student embedding and reporting on the Occupy Wall Street protests, to my current work today, amplifying equitable economic and urban development. At its core, this fascination is an ever-evolving understanding of storytelling and a journey into the endless frontier of media literacy. I'm deeply honored and privileged to be able to share that pursuit with you today. So without further ado, and thank you for bearing with us, it's my pleasure to introduce our two panelists today. Joining us first is Tenoch Flores. Let's bring Tenoch up.
Hey there.
Hey, Tenoch. Thanks so much for being here. Tenoch is a strategic communications consultant with 2 decades of experience in advocacy and campaign communications. He has advised clients and directed communication campaigns at the federal and state level. Most recently, he directed communications for a campaign that ran digital ads using poll-tested pro-immigrant messages aimed at persuadable voters in Wisconsin, Arizona, and North Carolina. Tenoch previously served as communications director for the California Democratic Party and has also taught courses in communication strategy and campaign communications at the UCLA and the University of San Francisco. Our second panelist joining us today is Ynze Bijl. Hey, Ynze.
Hi there. Nice to be here.
Thank you, Ynze. Ynze is originally from the Netherlands and is founder of Axe Digital, a San Francisco-based media production company where he has produced and directed hundreds of TV and internet spots for political campaigns on the local, state, and national stage, and won dozens of awards. He has worked on high-profile campaigns for candidates like Kamala Harris for president and Gavin Newsom for governor, as well as countless statewide ballot measures. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedules to do this. I want to remind our audience one more time that throughout the session, we look forward to your comments and your questions. So please go ahead and submit them through the chat functions, both on YouTube and Facebook. So with all that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Tenoch and Ynze.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for hosting this, Omeed and Faye and Crystal, everybody else at the Film Fest. I'm excited to be here today because it was just last year, which seems like an eternity ago, that the film festival showed, I believe it was the first Angry Man, which was a very, very well done documentary on Howard Jarvis and his legacy, of course, with Prop 13. We're going to be talking about the Prop 15 ads, which sought to overturn at least some of the work that Prop 13 initiated. And so for me, yeah, I'm very happy, always happy to do follow up on this and happy to be here with Ynze.
Yes, thank you, Tenoch. Yeah, glad to discuss all these ads and the approaches that we in the media take to get certain messages out and how we go about it. And maybe we can dive a little bit into how the sauce is made, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like we're just going to be looking at a few ads, maybe 3 from each side, and effectively just doing some shop talk here. So hope enough people find that interesting. Okay.
And then, of course, I want to mention these are not ads that my firm made. And likewise, you were not involved in those ads either, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So neither of us had a role on this campaign. Obviously, we have colleagues who probably who did work on the yes side to this, and certainly is a small world. We've both been involved with ballot initiatives, and know that it's extremely, extremely difficult work to get some of these over the hump in a state like California.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
You want to go into the first ad?
Yeah, I was going to say, Omeed, if you wouldn't mind taking it away. I think we're going to look at the first ad here, which is, again, we're going to look at the first ads. All 3 of them are going to be from the yes side, and then we're going to do the same for the no side. So I think we're about to see the first yes side ad here.
It's making some corporate CEOs hot under the collar. Prop 15. With their army of accountants, the big guys think they're entitled to tax handouts. Prop 15 closes the loopholes. The richest 10% of corporate properties provide 92% of the revenue, while homeowners, renters, and small businesses are protected. To fund our schools and community colleges, to equip our healthcare workers, vote yes on 15. Relax, hotshot. You can afford to pay your fair share, just like we do.
Great. So we saw an ad, I think it was titled Caller, from the yes on 15 side. I mean, Ynze, we could talk about this, but to me, what this ad seems to be doing is kind of setting up a villain in the story here. This being California, a state that is, extremely democratic, deep blue, we can say. corporate CEOs, who aren't quote paying their fair share are a very sort of tried and true villain, I would say. So in addition to doing that, it quickly gets to who it is that's going to be paying for this increase, which, I think there's a bar graph there showing that the richest 92% of commercial property owners are going to be paying for this revenue increase. So, like I said, sort of setting up a villain and making clear who it is that's going to be paying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's commonly done is the use of stock footage in this case, just taking these images that are licensed from somewhere else, this type of music, like here we go,
right,
with the aggressive music. The one thing that I found slightly confusing in the ad is when we're talking about the people that are going to be affected by this,
right,
and there was no change in tone, music-wise or otherwise. So I think you really have to pay attention and go like, oh, okay, there was something about the renters, the everyday people are going to be affected by this. That to me got lost a little bit.
So you're talking about there's no there's no audio, I guess, oral transition between sort of the villain's music, and then we're presumably talking about people who are not the villain after that point.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I would personally have maybe approached differently and go like, okay, we need a tonal shift here if we're going to talk about the people are affected, because we need to really feel for that. Like, oh, we don't want that,
Right. We're past that now.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I mean, another thing that I'll just flag for the audience here, and this will go for, I think, all of the ads that we're about to see. If you look closely at the sort of the last frame of the ad, you'll see half of the screen, get taken up by a black box with white text. Yeah, thank you, Omeed. Thank you. So we could see here, this is a recent, reform that's been implemented in California. The top 3 funders, I believe it is, for any ballot prop who are advertising must, by law, be listed in very easily identifiable font size, lettering, et cetera, in part of the ad. So the way most of these directors, which Ynze is definitely your sort of side of the street here, are choosing to approach this is, we're just going to take up the bottom half of the video of the frame here and list the top 3 sponsors. So I do list that as a way to let the audience know that it is fair. It's getting easier to identify who is backing an ad in California or a proposition in California by looking at the ads. So here we see California Teachers Association, obviously SEIU, Service Employees Union, International Union, and Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. So the advocacy arm for the foundation there. So I think Ynze, I don't know if you want to talk about how you've probably been here when you had a shift in having to do more of that, and how that's changed from a director standpoint.
I think it's really changed over the last few years, and I think it's good for the public that's watching this, so that exactly who is paying for this ad, and that's usually also very informative on. Hold on, is it big unions, or are these big corporate entities that are paying for it? It will help you decide, like, whether you really fall for this ad or not. We have to display that by law. And it has to be up for 5 seconds. And in this case, the major funders, the organization that spends most of the money is on top, and it goes down like that. So a lot of times we change that legal throughout the campaign, because there's another funder that comes in, or an organization that's donating money, and they may take the top spot on that. And the broadcasters will actually reject the spot if you don't have it exactly 5 seconds, and if the font size is not exactly the right size.
Right.
So we have to all follow that, and it can be in the beginning or at the end.
Right.
But then you have to decide, what is our end card going to be? What do we want to see in the rest of that screen that is not black?
Right. The upper half in this case. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Great. So that was the first ad. Why don't we go, Omeed, if you want to show the second ad now on the yes side that we're taking a look at today.
The last time your property tax bill went down?
What? Never. Are you kidding me?
For years, the residential burden has gone up, while the corporate burden has gone down. Prop 15 reverses that. It closes corporate loopholes and invests in schools, small business, and firefighters. And when the big corporations pay more, your tax bill goes down. That's right, a savings of $121 a year for the average home. Give homeowners a break. Vote yes on 15.
Okay, great. So that was, another on the yes side. I mean, for me, what comes to mind is the first thing is that it's pretty clear who this ad is aiming at, and that is voters who are also homeowners in California. Not a common target audience, I would say, but especially important given that this particular ballot prop that we're discussing has to do with property taxes, which, of course, home ownership is expensive in California. Right. Property taxes can also be expensive depending on where you're living, especially. So, it's a guy sort of doing his own yard work out in front of his, we can assume idyllic suburban home somewhere in the state. It's got nice use of graphs. I think they pop well. They're colorful. So yeah, I mean, for me, this is just clearly an ad aimed at homeowners to let them know that this is about them and trying to let them know that, they're not going to be hurt in this process by this ballot proposition.
Yeah, and again, if we're talking about the actual way this ad has been put together, to me, it looks like it's mostly stock footage, then interspersed potentially with people that they actually filmed, but they only have one line.
Right.
One of the other things for me that stands out is if I was going to do this ad, I would probably have more diversity in the homeowners and have men, women, and more races represented. Unless this ad was targeted specifically at a certain audience. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is the shout out of the $121.
Right.
Seems not that huge of a deal. So
yeah,
I would change that and keep it vague, probably better.
Right. I mean, depending on where you live, where you own a home in California, that may be may not be that much of a difference for your yearly property tax bill. I mean, I think it's an issue of they crunch the numbers and that was the average. So, certain people are going to, benefit from this more than others, certain homeowners, I should say. But yeah, depending on where you are, $121 a year isn't going to sound like a lot. Right. So yeah, I agree with that. But, just curious, you mentioned that there were a couple of, maybe it was stock footage interspersed with like maybe 3 interviews that they did where the people being interviewed had one line. Just from a process and technical standpoint, in your experience, how long does that take to get done in a day? We saw 10 seconds of people speaking, but how much time went into that from what you could tell?
Well, this could have been done real quick, in a 2-hour window or whatnot, but what we would normally do is go out and probably get a handful of these homeowners, and whether we film at the same location or different locations, but we probably spent at least 30 minutes with each person to run through a bunch of different lines and maybe have other material that we could end up using for another ad perhaps.
Right.
In that case, I would have shot everything. So that would be a whole day of filming, I think, to shoot all this, mowing the lawn and everything else that comes with it. So it has a consistent look.
Right.
As opposed to a mismatch of stuff that may have been stock footage or not.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to wrap this one up, I guess, pretty clearly aimed at homeowners, Prop 13, 1978, Howard Jarvis, that was very much about, the homeowners, quote unquote, revolt in California. So we see that this is an audience that's obviously going to continue to be top of mind. on this initiative, and pretty much anything to do with housing. It's just something to consider there, to keep looking at.
Yeah, I mean, it's been done many, many times. Homeowners or renters, depending on what the story is about, but everyone can relate to that, right?
Right.
You don't want that to be too much affected by either taxes or ending up having to pay more rent or more mortgage because of some sort of ballot initiative. You can relate to it. I can relate to it. Most everybody else who's watching probably will go, okay, we don't want that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just important to set context again, we're not looking at all of the ads here. So this one in particular was aimed at homeowners. There were others that were aimed at a renter audience, we could assume. So yeah, just to keep in mind, we're just looking at a very narrow slice of the offerings for both sides of this initiative. So I think we are ready to move to the third and final one on the yes side before we get over to see what the opponents did.
Sure.
Just want similar things.
Safe neighborhoods,
A healthy family.
and good schools for our children.
But California's school funding ranks near the bottom of all states.
And we have failed to invest in our communities.
Let's do something about it.
Require wealthy investors and big corporations to pay their fair share in property taxes.
Invest more in schools and local communities.
And do better for our kids and families and our future.
Join us.
join us.
Join us in putting schools and communities first.
Great. So really good looking ad, I think, shows a diverse audience. Trying to run a winning ballot initiative campaign in California, you are going to want to show that your initiative, your campaign is part of a broad coalition, includes diverse voices, communities, et cetera. So I just thought it was really, really well done.
Yeah, I agree, Tenoch. I mean, it was, I personally love this kind of stuff where you have people look directly at the camera and shoot them in an environment where there's no distraction. Like we get really pulled in by what they are saying. And I liked it a lot. And I mean, you know, in the end, we know how the campaign went and the ballot measure went, but I think this was pretty effective. The only people that may not really care about that is people that don't have kids or don't have kids in school.
Right.
You know, there's always that, like, well, we don't care about that.
Right. Sure. Right. And no, it's a great point. And just to emphasize again that we don't have data on where this particular ad ran, for example, versus the last one we saw. There could have been additional targeting there, but yeah, I think that's a good point. Again, you mentioned that as a filmmaker, as a director, this is the kind of stuff you like to shoot. I'm guessing the controlled environment has a lot to do with it, right? People, you have a chance to light it however you want, pull in the actors that you want, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, to me, this is a really well done ad. Again, if you're running a campaign in California on a progressive issue, you're going to want to demonstrate that you've got a broad coalition behind you. And I think this ad does that effectively.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to your comment on the last ad that, whether we're targeting something specifically for a niche audience, I mean, we normally end up maybe creating 10 ads or more ads for a certain campaign initially, and whether they are targeted to people in rural areas or in LA only or up in the Bay Area. But we then, or they feature a nurse or one is, firefighters, whatever. We do, this ad testing to see what works best. And based on that, we only may run 4 ads, during that whole season. So it's a whole process.
Right. And when you say ad testing, you're speaking of, showing the ads to focus groups. I'm guessing, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, but.
Yeah, that's something that I'm personally not involved with, but usually the campaign, that the people that are behind the strategy are the ones that are kind of deciding, okay, these are sometimes we make 20 ads and they say, okay, we take these 10 ads for testing. And that's usually a 1-week process, sometimes 10 days. and then it's decided, okay, this polls really well, so we're going out with this one first.
Yeah, and that's a good, I guess, roundabout way to get back to the discussion of these ads are created primarily based on the polling itself. The polling tells you which voters you need to go. The campaign tells you which voters you need to go after.
Yeah.
Then you figure out, okay, this is where the polling is showing that, this is our best chance here. This is our best message with our audiences. And so those ads are then created based on that information. Then, to your point, tested in focus groups, et cetera. And oftentimes the ones that perform best are the ones that get shown to a wider audience or to an audience of voters.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Why don't we then, I think, I hope we're doing okay on time, but I would imagine our taskmaster would let us know if that was not the case by now. But yeah, why don't we move into the no side? We've got 3 ads to show there.
57 years ago, we opened. This year, the pandemic closed us twice. Now, special interest put Proposition 15 on the ballot, raising property taxes and rents on small business. And they admit homeowners are next. A worse recession isn't the time for the biggest property tax hike ever. No on 15.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good looking ad. It seems, I would assume that this was effective. I mean, I think this is an example of the No campaign sort of leaning into the moment and the environment at the time. I mean, last year, and obviously still into now, but especially last year when the pandemic first started, raging, I guess we could say, you couldn't turn on the news without seeing a story of small business or a restaurant struggling, with the fact that you couldn't have indoor dining. It took a while for outdoor dining to come about. And then obviously for public health reasons, that needed to be limited again. And so, I mean, I think it's really well done in that regard. I mean, it's a good looking ad also, I think. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this ad. I like the storytelling aspect of it. I would do that every day if I could. It's creating a little mini movie, if you will. They probably hired actors for this, but I can see how you could do this with real people as well if you have enough time and you just direct them to do certain things. So to build a story, I mean, it was high quality. It costs a lot more, I'm sure, than any of the other ads on the other side, which also sometimes tells you, okay, these people are really, they have a lot of cash and they're going to fight this, right?
Yeah.
Which is, of course, we have the legal disclaimer at the end, so you can see who's paying for it. But I think it was very effective. I would make the text maybe slightly bigger that's on screen, but otherwise, yeah, okay, a business needs to close. That's terrible.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think that's that's going to appeal to a lot of voters. That situation. I mean, a couple of other points here. There is a comment from an audience member, Adam Mayer. My text is on my screen is kind of small, so I'm hoping I'm getting that right. I hope I get that right. But sort of asking about, one of the scare tactics that the No campaign leaned into is this idea that, the homeowners are next, right? That this is what the No campaign was doing, which is probably what I would have done if I were them. I mean, their charge here was to stop this, right? And I think what's important about that, though, is that in that ad, it uses language that says, and they admit homeowners are next, right? So that means somebody somewhere affiliated with the Yes campaign said something like that in front of an audience that was recorded and went out. I have no idea what the context of that was. Maybe they were trying to fire up the crowd, et cetera. If you're putting it in an ad, these things have been looked at by attorneys. They're not going to put something on there that's going to leave them open, to legal jeopardy. And so it's just a reminder that, as, people are trying to excite their base or their crowd, every one of those messages could be used against them in certain context by the opposition. So it's a reminder that you're no longer just speaking to one audience here. The opposition sees something like that, they may grab on it, and you see that line pushed in several of these ads.
Yeah, and Adam's making another comment here. The tragic piano music. Yes, it's another. It's another. It's a tactic that's clearly works. Right.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So great. Let's go to the next ad then on the no side.
Millones de californianos están sin trabajo. La propuesta Ynze aumenta los impuestos a la propiedad por 11,000 millones al año. Las familias de California no pueden pagar más por alimentos, servicios públicos y cuidado de salud. Los impuestos a la propiedad más altos significa que aún más familias no podrán pagar sus rentas o hacer sus pagos de casa. No a la Ynze.
All right, thank you for that. The drama, yeah, and actually noting the same exact piano music.
Yeah.
But I think, well, first to note, obviously this is a Spanish language ad. Important to note, there were Spanish language ads on both sides of this. We just, selected this one for use on the no side. And a reminder that we're not looking at everything here. We're just choosing 3. But to me, I think what this demonstrates, and if there was one thing that I would ask or, that I would have people walk away with from this experience, this session here, is that it's much easier to tell a story that fits into an existing narrative, as opposed to trying to create a new narrative, a new world for your audience, right? So what they're doing here is they're just slotting into the narrative that, California is expensive, housing prices are expensive, people are having to move. And there's certainly data to back up that, you have seen more people leaving California than coming into California. It's a big state, obviously, that has something to do with it as well. But I think the overall point is that they're taking something that already exists in the viewer's mind, and they're feeding into that as opposed to trying to create a new world, right? And I think that makes this an effective ad.
Yeah, I think it's clearly part of a series, hence repeating in music is a common thing. To keep the same tone. Okay, it's small businesses first. It's people losing their homes. There may have been 2 or 3 other ads in a similar vein, right? Maybe one focusing on African American audience. At least that's, I think, what we usually do. But this is, I think it was effective. There was a little bit of overacting going on, but people get it. Like, we don't want to lose our home, even if they don't understand anything else about this proposition. Right. I mean, in the end, that you should really read up on everything and not be influenced too much by these ads. But we're trying to tell a story and get a message across in 30 seconds or sometimes 15 seconds. So, it's kind of bullet pointed in that case. So, but I like the ad. I mean, I think it looked good. Same thing. Same production value.
There's a consistency in the production, that you see on all these. I don't know if that's, you would know better than I would. Obviously, Ynze, the same kind of lens or lighting, what camera, what have you. But you can tell it's part of the same series, right?
Yeah, for sure. And when we do these things, it's the same thing. There's a few different scenarios, and be spread out over 2 days or whatnot. But we shoot everything in the same style and same lighting, and use the same music usually because it's part of a series. And it was. To me, it was effective. I mean, I liked it.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to the point you made in the earlier, the one we saw just before this one, which is, looking at this and you're thinking, okay, this campaign has money to do this, and they did. Sure. But I do want to flag that this isn't a case where one side was, severely outspent. I think the no side raised something like $74 million for this, and the yes side was at something like 68 million. So it's not quite, parity, but they were, it's a little difficult to say that they were outspent entirely. So that's something else to keep in mind. I mean, sometimes it's just kind of like, look, we were outspent 100-1. There's very little we could do in a state of 40 million people where, TV advertising is the primary way to reach voters. But that's just a note also for the audience there on the spending for these campaigns. So, close to 200 million when you combine it together.
So it's almost, when you mention those two numbers, I mean, it's almost the difference in the number of votes as well, the percentage difference.
Yeah, right? I think it was, in this case, it was something like 4% that the yes side lost by. They came within 4 percentage points. I think it adds up to 675,000 votes or so, somewhere around there. So it's in a state of California size. I mean, that's somewhat close. That's within range. It's within 5 points. Something else to consider.
For sure.
Great. So maybe we'll go into the last one on the no side. And then after that, I think we're going to have a ongoing sort of discussion, and we'll take some questions from the audience.
Absolutely.
Proposition 15 increases property taxes $11 billion a year, raising rents on small business. And they admit homeowners are next. As higher property taxes push our costs up, family businesses will go under. Unemployment and income inequality will get worse. Our worst recession isn't the time for the biggest property tax hike ever. No in 15.
And there it was. The third one targeting a different audience. Again, beautiful ad. Liked it a lot. And they're using that, homeowners, they say
homeowners are next. Right there it is again.
They say homeowners are next. Yeah.
Right. And just a reminder again that in that particular line that came from, somebody who they were able to tie to the yes campaign in some form. I don't know what the details are behind that, but that seems to be the case. But I mean, well done, good looking ad. I look at this and I'm just reminded that, winning campaigns are about driving the right message at the right time, right? And again, the no side just took the pandemic, which was entirely, obviously outside of anybody's control. We're still dealing with that. It's been, among the most devastating economic and public health events that this country has experienced once in 100 years. But they took that uncertainty that this event created, and they were able to raise outright doubt in some cases, but in some cases they probably raised just enough doubt so that people who might have been on the fence on this said, well, you know what? Yeah, it doesn't seem like the right time. I did just see a news report about a small business closing, or as I was walking the dog yesterday, I saw that my favorite business 3 blocks away is no longer going to be able to make it through this, so I just think that they were able to recognize the environment that we were in, and were able to sow just enough doubt.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, the pandemic, we used it extensively in the last 2020 season on ballot measures that I was involved with. The situation is already terrible now. And now we're going to add this, or now we have an extra tax, or now this is going to happen. It's an easy one to incorporate right now, even though it's completely not related. But, everybody's feeling that pain and can relate to that. So therefore, I think it'd be foolish not to include that as part of your messaging. if it's on that type of ballot measure that's going to affect people personally,
Absolutely. There was. No, sorry. Go ahead, Ynze.
No, you go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say there was a question from an audience member asking how much these ads cost, and in terms of placement, tens of millions of dollars, depending on where you're running. If it's the Bay Area or LA, and for how long you're running it. I think the yes side. I'm probably going to get these numbers wrong because I don't have it right in front of me, but I want to say they spent somewhere in the high 30s in terms of millions in placing ads, and the no side were somewhere in the mid 40s or low 40s. So that's how much they cost to run them in a state like California. Ynze, I don't know if you could give us a guesstimate on what that last one would cost to actually produce and shoot, et cetera, the barbershop one we saw.
So the barbershop, I mean, as I mentioned, the way that was done most definitely is there was probably the series, like, okay, we're going to go out and shoot these 3 or 4 ads together. I don't know, they could be anywhere from, $70,000 to $100,000 when it's all said and done. A few days of filming, actors, renting of locations, editorial, musical score. It goes quick. But on the other hand, I mean, we have done stuff using real people and kind of using cheap equipment, for as little as anywhere, I mean, you can make ads anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000, I guess, a piece. And if it's just done in the studio with stock footage only, then, it's a few days of editorial and you could be done for $8,000 if it's all planned the right way. So it runs the gamut, really.
Right.
We talked about this before, Tenoch. I mean, I always have this constant discussion with the campaign people that if they're going to spend $50 million,
everything is an argument with the campaign.
Yeah. If they're going to spend $50 million or even $10 million on media buy, why are we spending $10,000 on an ad that's going to run?
Absolutely.
That millions of people are gonna see. I think it should be, make something that's going to stand out, especially in any political season. I mean, you turn on the TV and there's hundreds and hundreds of these ads. So you have to create something that people will remember. It has to stand out. It has to look good, I think. And yeah, with the messaging, or can we go outside of the box and do something really, daring or very different, go black and white, or have it just be one single shot. I have so many different ideas, but they hardly ever get incorporated into anything because, there's a tried and true formula and let's stick with that. Unless, we're doing a campaign for a candidate and the candidate is really gung-ho to do something that's different.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think that's an excellent point. I mean, the tried and true formula often gets maligned, right? Oh, that's why, you lost or whatever it is. But, people never say that when the tried and true works, right? And so oftentimes it works. I mean, there's polling and, people and we have models on voters, the kind of voters that we need to get to the polls and what, the profile is, and you develop polling based around that. And the reason people stick to it is because it does work. I mean, I know that that's not the answer people often like to hear, or, to their mind, there's this one silver bullet, solution. If you have the amazing ad, then, you're just going to turn the tide. I mean, maybe, I mean, you also need the money so that people could see the ad, or otherwise it's just going to float around. But yeah, I mean, I think what we want to do now is sort of, wrap up on this, and then take some questions. I think Omeed is going to be moderating from the audience. But, again, 4 percentage points, that's how close the Yes campaign came on this one, about 675,000 votes in California. It's interesting. I think, looking at it, the numbers in LA County, which is where the motherlode of votes is in California, obviously, The campaign, the Yes campaign, did something like 54%, 53.5 to 46.5. Yes beat the no side in LA. But you look at something like Sacramento County, and the no side actually came in at 54.1%, the yes side at about 46%. Obviously, less votes in Sacramento County,
right,
in LA County, and I think ultimately we're talking about little points you could shave here and there, which would make a difference in a normal year. I mean, there was a pandemic going on, right?
Yeah.
People had other concerns other than, what their, people were worried about staying in their home, much less what their property tax bill was going to be. And so in addition to that, I mean, there was a presidential campaign. It just took up a lot of resources for progressives. It was getting Trump out was the number one, number two, and number three priority for very understandable reasons. There was an effort to hold the House for progressives and for Democrats, and there was also an effort to retake the Senate. So there's a lot that this campaign, that the Yes campaign was competing against in 2020. So, I mean, that needs to be taken into account, along with the fact that it's just in a ballot initiative campaign, it's always easier to get people to vote no than yes. I mean, I don't know what you can tell us on that side of it, Ynze, from a filmmaker's perspective, getting people to no instead of to yes. But that confluence of factors, I think, is what contributed to something where, they came close, but it wasn't enough in this environment.
Yeah, I think you're making a good point here with the no campaigns. I mean, it is, regardless of what the ballot measure is, I mean, it is definitely easier to sell that because, there's no commitment that people have to make at that point. There's going to be no consequences. I don't want it, as opposed to embracing something and saying, yes, we want that.
What does that mean?
Legislation will now be put into place, that may affect them one way or another. So I think it's easier to be on the nose side when you're doing this kind of stuff. Unless it's egregious and it's just a terrible thing that we shouldn't be involved with at all.
Right, which are always fun campaigns to work on, of course. Now on those, but yeah, no, I think Omeed is gonna pull some questions from the audience, so we should be seeing him pretty soon. There he is. Hey there.
Hey guys, that was awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thanks
for putting this together.
Yeah, well, just being able to kind of look behind the curtain and know a little bit more about what's being not necessarily done to us, but what people want us to be doing and thinking is great. There's a few great questions in the comments. Let me pull one up right now. Crystal actually had a question for us, and she said, can you describe how Prop 15 would have actually affected people? And this goes to Ynze's point where it's so much easier to just go on the no side. That were both of your points.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that it would have increased money going to schools and essential services like firefighters. I mean, and if you're a homeowner, probably would have been minimal, the effect on you. The people that it would have affected the most would have been commercial property owners. Yeah. But, you're hearing that from somebody who was in favor of this proposition. So keep that in mind.
So agreed.
I had one for you, Ynze. I noticed on the no side, they had the disclaimers up front. Is that a deliberate choice? Is that so the audience kind of forgets who funded it by the end of it? Because I feel like when it's at the end, you kind of stick on that.
Right. I mean, that could have been a deliberate choice. I mean, traditionally, it usually goes on the end. And one of the reasons that they may have shifted it to the front as well is because they wanted to end up on some kind of beautiful imagery and put some graphics there, as opposed to having most of the screen taken up by that legal. But yeah, in the beginning, you don't really read it. You're listening and you're seeing part of the message, and then all of a sudden you're in the ad, and it's like, hold on, who paid for this now? You can go back, I guess, and on YouTube and figure it out. But I don't know who really reads the legal. I mean, I do, clearly, because of my involvement in the industry. But that'd be a good thing to maybe take a poll on. Like, are people actually reading this legal? It's up there for them, really, to inform them of who's paying for this.
I have the Cal Matters. They have a nice graph about where money was spent on this. I don't know if it makes sense. I'll just bring it up for a second here. Okay. They have this super nice interactive thing here. First of all, it shows you total spending on these ads was 141 million. If you look on the no side, they spent about 74 million. The yes side spent about 67 million. And then obviously it breaks down by who was supporting it on either side. I found this super useful as a resource when I was doing research on this topic. Yeah. Do you guys think that how important is it who spends money on these ads? Do you think that people actually take that into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, it's important, obviously, for people like Ynze and myself. I mean, we track that stuff. Right. I imagine other voters do as well. Do they track it to the degree that professionals are doing so, to the degree that journalists are doing so? I could safely say probably not. I think they're just looking for cues here and there. Okay, it's the teachers are for this. Okay, then I'm for that too. And if you're on the conservative side, okay, well, the Chamber of Commerce or whatever entity it is that's for it, then I'm for it too, whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, it's good that there's, disclosure on spending. Obviously there should be, and this is all information that's available to, anybody with an internet connection. You go to the California Secretary of State's website, you poke around there and you could find this information. Now, how many people are going to actually take time out of their day to go and look through that website? I think sometimes in progressive circles, we romanticize the idea that people are going to be digging in there, staying up day and night to figure out how to vote on these propositions. But, we need to wrestle with the fact that people have jobs. Now, there's now a pandemic. They have jobs. They have families. They're trying to keep their families afloat, trying to keep their jobs, et cetera. There's only so much a person who's not paid to do this professionally can be expected to do. So just to kind of keep that in mind, I guess.
Yeah, but I do think it does matter who's paying for it. And I think people do pay attention to that part, because that's the one thing that they can, quickly say, oh, some big developers group is paying for it. Of course, they're protecting all their investments and they don't want to be taxed, all this extra money if this law passes. So I would say people do, because you don't have to go dig into any other information except seeing that who paid for it, unless it's vague. There's some sort of PAC that's just called Working Californians or whatever, or Californians for Freedom. There's all these PACs out there that can sort of hide where the money's actually coming from. With having this generic name, you can't tell if these are people that you would agree with, yes or no.
Yeah, additional point to that, one of the things that helps, I don't think we saw this in any of the ads, but often you'll see it sort of ripped from the headlines, the San Francisco Chronicle says, or, the LA Times says, on the who's paying for kind of genre of ad, I guess, because there are those ads as well, to Ynze's point. Yes, people pay attention to who's paying for these, but they're doing so at a basic level. They're not digging in much further. But if you could say that, big oil is behind this ad, don't take our word for it. Look at what the Los Angeles Times had said about this, right? So that is another way that people are, informed. One of the primary ways is through media, whether it's, traditional print media, local TV news is still a really, well turned to kind of source for this kind of stuff. People pay attention to that, and it could be as some of the more effective ads call attention to who it is that's paying for the opposition ads on some of these, depending on where you land.
Yeah.
I think one final question that I want to pose to both of you is, someone in the audience or a voter, what should they be looking out for when they watch an ad? In my research, there was like 4 or 5 points. It's the narrative style, whether it's a positive or negative appeal, believe it or not, if there's music or not, and then the context. Is it professional versus family? So from both of you, and maybe we'll start with Ynze, if you were telling a voter to, be aware of these things when you're watching an ad, what would it be?
Wow. Yeah, there's so many aspects to it and possibilities there. I would say an ad that's just built out of stock footage has a lot of big text on it is one of these things where you just get, oh, okay, I'm not really aware of what's going on here. On that note as well, which we didn't see with these ads, is we use a lot of pull quotes from publications, whether it's LA Times or the Chronicle or NBC News or whatnot, that we put on screen to make our point. Like it was a quote from an editorial or whatnot that they're basically in favor of this, and this kind of validates the position that you are taking as in the campaign. Like, see, all these people are on board. If there's a lack of that in any ad, then you probably should wonder, like, okay, does anyone agree with this position that this campaign is taking? So that would be one thing. The ads that the storytelling ads are highly manipulative, maybe you could say, because there's actors and we're just creating a story, and either it grabs you right here and you go, oh yeah, I get it, but it's somewhat fabricated, So real people, I would say, is always preferred in that case, if you want to be honest. But then again, it ties into who's paying for it, and it's confusing. I would say read up on everything. You can read up at the Secretary of State website what these propositions are about and make a decision based on that. But to your point, a lot of people don't have time for that or access to it, and it's our job to deliver that message, as quickly as possible in a 30-second soundbite.
Right. Yeah, for me, I would just, I agree with all that. I would just, I guess go back to the point we were making earlier about who's paying for it. It's pretty clear now because of disclosure laws in California. And as we just saw in each example that we saw today, it lists the top 3 funders for each of these initiatives. So that's public information. That's easy information to obtain if you're looking at the ad. So I would look at that. And then I would look at the ad and I would ask myself, what is the story that they're trying to tell with this ad? What do they want me to believe? And who does that story benefit? You could then use that to make your own judgment as to whether it's something that I support or I oppose, et cetera. But I think that's those are 2 immediate takeaways that I would have.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a riveting. I loved it. I hope our audience did too. I just want to remind everyone that they can connect with Tenoch at Tenoch Flores and follow him in his work, and then also find Ynze's work at axedigital.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We love having you guys here, and
yeah, this was fun. Thank you.
We look forward to doing more with you guys. I'm going to invite Faye back on to send us off.
Thanks, Omeed. Thanks, Tenoch.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody who's watching.
Faye, you're on mute.
Whoops, sorry. Thanks, Omeed. Thanks, Tenoch. Thanks, Ynze. Thanks, audience members, for all your comments and questions and interacting with us. So stay with the SF Urban Film Fest today. Later on at 5:30 p.m., we have the Spiritual Infrastructure Watch Party, which will feature the Alice Street film. And then we'll watch the film together, then go straight into panel discussion. It's not too late to register for a free access code for the watch party. We'll drop the link to register in the chat, and then stay tuned for tomorrow, Thursday, February 18th. We have 2 more watch parties, one at 12 noon called Pandemic of Opportunity, What and How to Change the Public Realm. And then tomorrow at 5:30, we have another watch party called Exploring the Urban American Indian Experience in Yalamu. And that is presented in collaboration with the American Indian Cultural District of San Francisco. So we have tons and tons of programming. We want you to stay with us all week. In the meantime, we want to remind you to please take a moment to fill out our survey. It really helps us understand who we're reaching. And also, if you love our programs, please share our events and tag us on social media at SF Urban Film Fest. Thank you again for joining us. Bye.